Welcome to Smart Branding, a podcast dedicated to branding, naming, and domain names. I'm Tatiana Bonneau, and with my guests, we try to help you create and grow strong, memorable, and meaningful brands online. I believe time is one of our most precious assets, and so I want to thank you in advance if you decide to spend the next 30 minutes with us. I promise to do my best to make those worth it. Let's go!
So we can start, I guess, with tell me a little bit about yourself and Curios and how did you start and what do you do?
Sure. So I'm Grant Powell. I'm the founder of Curios. I've been building technologies for at least 20 years, for a long time now. I've built a number of startups, including the first ever app that integrated with Spotify's API. It was called Curiously, not to be confused with Curios. Okay. I built the first ever live streaming platform for YouTube, which featured concerts such as Alicia Keys, Bonnaroo, Coachella, some other amazing performances. And I also built the first ever peer-to-peer secured lending platform called Upon. So I've been doing technology startups for a long time. In addition to that, I'm an avid collector since a very young age. My specialty is rare coins, but I was very excited to discover the ability to collect digital things through NFTs. And when I went out to try and do that through OpenSea and other platforms, I found it to be extremely difficult. And so that's why I started Curios, because I knew that there was a better way to power people to create, sell, buy, and collect digital things such as NFTs.
All right, that's fascinating. And how long have you been doing that for? Curios in particular, how long has it been on for?
Yeah, so I started Curios back in 2020. We officially incorporated in January of 2021. And we just completed our seed raise a month ago. We raised $5 million in a very successful crowdfunding campaign.
Great. And you mentioned you've had a business that was called very similar earlier. So what was the reasoning and the process of naming Curios?
Total coincidence. So Curiously was a fun name chosen for a music dating app. Targeting people who are curious to get out there and discover new music and people. Curios is actually plural for collectibles. A curio is an object of intrigue or a collectible.
I see. Okay. And how did you get the domain name? I'm going to touch on that because we specialize in domains and domain names as part of branding.
Yeah, I've been buying and selling domain names for many years. I, at one point, had a portfolio of about 1,000 domain names. I still have maybe 200 or 300. And, domain names is a lot of luck and timing. I think ideally we would have gone perhaps with something like Curios, singular, but that domain wasn't available. Curios, however, was for sale for a very high price, depending on who you ask. And luckily, the person who owned it was willing to lease it before we bought it, which as a startup, we weren't sure if our company was going to succeed. We weren't sure if we were going to stick with that name. So it gave us an opportunity to experiment with the name and buy time to have the funding in order to be able to acquire it. So it was a bit of luck, but also a bit of strategy. I researched the domain, found the owner, and negotiated a good deal where we could do the lease to buy, which was a very important strategy for the company.
Yeah. And you said that as a goal to get that domain exactly, because most entrepreneurs, and I'm actually very curious to get your opinion on that, because I saw you also, well, obviously you've been in business for like 20 plus years in the digital space, but also I saw you have a digital marketing company as well. So most people in that situation would go, oh, I'll just get another name. I'll just add a dash or get a dot, whatever. And you didn't. You worked out a way to get the right name. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there's a saying that says the name doesn't make the company makes the name. And I believe there is some truth to that. But there's also a lot of power in having a name that tells a story of what your company does immediately. And usually there's not one single word or name that could tell that story. There's a few different words. So in our case, curio or curios was a word that would work. Collectible or collectibles would have worked. And there was a couple others I can't remember off the top of my head that we were exploring. And so we had a range of possibilities. And again, luckily, one of them was available. I think you can always look at synonyms, words that mean the same thing but are different words, and that helps expand your possibilities of domain names that may or may not be available for sale.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea as well. Before you have locked yourself into one particular name, to explore the opportunities and sort of make the best choice based on what is available and what works as well.
Yeah, it's very much a creative process to identify what your company offers, how you tell that story, which words can tell that story for you, and then which domain names are available tied to any of those words.
Yeah. How much do you feel branding matters in blockchain and in Web3 generally?
Yeah, so I think branding is very important universally for any type of company. I was mentored early on by someone named Susan White, who is a branding expert. She did a lot for Calvin Klein and ran her own consultancy afterwards. And it's very important. And anytime that you have a company that faces a consumer or even a business as a customer, your brand represents everything. It represents how much they trust you, how much they value your services. It represents the quality, your vision, your philosophies. And particularly with blockchain and Web3 companies, where these are new technologies, they're risky technologies to some people. There have been scams and rug pulls. I think it's absolutely paramount that you build a strong brand that people trust. I think brand is important for any industry, but definitely in one where people tend to have concerns over risks or fears. A brand helps them overcome that.
And with Curios, how do you play into that? Because in a way, it's a platform that allows people to create NFTs and to collect them. Where does their own brand come into that?
Say that question again.
So if I understand correctly, with Curios, you can create NFTs or collect NFTs and sell your NFTs. So where does a brand, like if I launch my own collection, let's say, where does my brand come into that platform? How do I present my brand on the platform?
Yeah. So ultimately, the people who we want to build trust with are the creators, the people who are creating NFTs, deploying smart contracts, and then listing them for sale. Because for their project, they have a responsibility to their fans or their community or their buyer to make sure that the NFTs and the smart contracts they're deploying are trustworthy and secure. And so our brand has to be trustworthy and secure to the creators so that they trust our tools to deliver to their fans what they're trying to do. So really, it's the creators that we're marketing to.
And what has been the most difficult thing since you launched?
Technically, or from a branding perspective, or?
Now you said both. Like what's been the most challenging thing and how did you resolve it?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, a lot of companies out there that do NFTs, in different capacities, they're either a marketplace or, some solution. There's a very simple way to create a smart contract, deploy it, and let people connect their wallet. It's all open source. But it's very limiting. You can only mint tokens on a certain chain, and you can only pay with the currency that is tied to that chain. So you're very limited in terms of what options you can offer buyers and collectors in terms of payments and wallets and these things. And we wanted to break that limitation. So our solution allows people to deploy smart contracts and mint NFTs across many different blockchains, and they can buy them all together in a single checkout that allows them to pay with different payment options, such as credit cards or in Ethereum, even though you maybe are buying an NFT on Solana. And so it's pretty easy to spin up, a marketplace based on a single chain and a single cryptocurrency. It's very, very, very complicated. I would say like 100 times more complicated to build this technology that allows you to interact with all these different chains and currencies at the same time.
I was going to ask you what makes you unique, because obviously there are other projects doing similar things, and I think you partly at least answered that now.
That's exactly right. And so it sort of goes unnoticed because we make it really easy, but it took 100 times more development hours to build this ability than it would have been to just make a single chain, single cryptocurrency, single wallet solution. And most of our competitors are that. And so, yeah, it's one of our big differentiators, and sort of goes unnoticed in terms of how much time, and technology goes into it. So that was one of our biggest challenges, was building that. And then as a brand, I think it's just, I think we've done a good job of building a brand that people trust. I think when they find us, it looks like you can tell right away that it's a quality product, that we have advanced and robust technologies, but very few people know about us, relatively speaking. We have really good traction for our young company, but we're just barely starting to get into the news. And so it's a struggle to have your brand break through all the noise, especially in the NFT space. The NFT space is just ridden with headlines, right? So-and-so is doing this of NFTs and that of NFTs, but all of those are just ideas. Very few of them have actually come to fruition and been turned into viable products. We've done a really good job of building a viable product, not as much of a good job of making headlines. And that's an important part of building a strong brand. So we're working on solving that now.
Yeah. Sounds like you've done a lot of work and you have a lot of work to do, but it's kind of the more exciting part, I guess, now.
Definitely.
What is your team like? Like when you talk about what you're doing, I feel like you have like 100 people working there.
We have an incredibly small team. We're about 15 now, but prior to funding, we were half that. We built most of our product with just a handful of people. And a lot of that is just, my experience in building technology for multiple decades. I know how to get straight to the work that matters, focus on the features, focus on the scalability, and not worry about all the other things that could get in the way and all the other distractions. I'd say there's a lot of, area for growth for us to be able to maybe fine tune those features, continue to make them easier to use even than they are now. But staying very, very focused on what matters most has helped us build product fast with a small team.
That's great. And well, what was I gonna say? Yeah, you mentioned just now that's what allowed you to move fast and build a strong brand and a really good, robust product, that you have the experience to be able to focus on the things that are most important now and then fine tune later. My next question is going to be, so that kind of leads to it. In your experience, your personal experience, and I guess you've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs, what are the biggest mistakes they make when it comes to building and branding?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. One of them is analysis paralysis, spending so much time researching and conceptualizing, for the first 6 months of what your product could be. And then by the time you go to actually start building on the product, the concepts are outdated anyways, and you have to start over it. So people just get into this endless cycle of conceptualizing and never actually building. Something that I always focus on is trying to make that first dollar of revenue. Because when you do, it's an important validator that what you've built is something someone will pay for. And so if you release a product quickly and see if anybody will pay for it, that's a really good approach, in my opinion, because if they don't, well, then you go back and rethink your product and release something new. And when you get to that point where you make your first dollar, you say, aha, I've built something that someone will pay for. And again, instead, I see a lot of people building hypothetical, products and features that there may or may not even be a demand for. Another saying that I believe in strongly is, don't build a solution for a problem that doesn't exist. If you're building a product, make sure you're actually solving a problem that people want to have solved. That's some of my advice. Thank
you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm sitting outside and I'm moving. Anyway, that. Yeah, so next and last question, I guess, unless you want to add something, what's next, Curios?
Yeah, next for us is to continue to build out our multi-chain support and to continue to build out our API and tools so that we make it as easy as possible for people to just create and sell, right? As a creator, whether you're a company or an individual, you don't want to have to worry about choosing the right technology and make sure you're implementing it correctly. You just want to worry about what you're creating and making sure that your creation gets in front of your, fans or customers. So we're always working to build more tools and to simplify our existing tools. That's the future work. And then, from an industry perspective, I think there are some big challenges. Every blockchain is its own walled garden. Every marketplace is its own walled garden. Every metaverse or game is its own walled garden. They don't communicate and play nicely with each other. And I want to see the industry have more openness and more interoperability. And that's something that we're trying to solve.
That really speaks to me, because I was in web development, but 15 or more years ago, and I haven't done that for some time now. I'm more into branding and marketing and consulting, but thinking of what nightmare that was, different browsers and devices and programming languages, and now with NFTs and Web3, that's another level. I just it's crazy.
Yeah,
I can imagine. Well, it's a very young industry, so I guess it has to get better. But like you said, it's the key is communication and openness. So hopefully that it does move quickly. So yeah, I do feel it will get better quickly.
Yep.
That was my last question, but as you were speaking, I thought of another one, so I'm just going to throw that there. You mentioned your main focus is the creators. Who can be a creator? Does one have to have some particular set of skills, or be somewhere, or have some budget, or who can be a creator on Curios?
Yeah, we use the creator term loosely, because a creator is anyone who wants to use our platform to create something. And that something could be art, it could be access, it could be an experience, it could be music. So, creators in the more traditional definition would be musicians, artists, writers. But businesses are also creators in our mind. Businesses who want to create experiences, game developers who are creating games. So it's a pretty loose term for us. And I think it's an important term because we're not in the business of helping people do business. We're in the business of helping people create. Those people might be businesses, but really it's about creating.
All right. Yeah, I think that just clarifies it for our audience and for myself. Great. I don't have any more questions at this stage.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for speaking with me, and have a good one.
Thank you too. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of Smart Branding Podcast. Feel free to visit smartbranding.com for more information and reach out if you have any suggestions, questions, ideas, or just want to learn more about how a good domain name strategy can help you build a strong and successful brand. See you next time.